Hey, what's up? My name's Justin, and welcome to 65 Drums. Today's another episode of 65 Questions. This is the weekly show where I just answer questions I've gotten about electronic drums. So let's jump to the first question from 6X's, who writes, Hey 65 Drums, I bought a TD17 KVX and have played it for the last 3 days. I feel like I need to do something to replace the KD10 kick drum. Do you recommend I buy an SPD1 kick instead? So I don't know if I've ever really covered this topic before, kick drum upgrades for electronic drums. Because depending on your kit, it could be one of the weak links, and maybe you want to upgrade it at some points, just have something that feels a little more solid, a more, acoustic bass drum type feel. So here are a couple of different options to look at. You got the Roland KD85, and that's selling on eBay right now for like, $140, which is a nice solid upgrade over the KD10 that you have right now. And then, of course, the KD120, I actually have this kick drum. I love it. It feels very, very solid. It's more expensive. It's selling used on eBay right now for like $230. And if you can go find like a Heart Dynamics kick drum, those are pretty solid. They're kind of more rare, but they're really cool too. Yamaha sells some pretty nice ones as well that I believe are compatible with Roland drum modules because it's just one piezo inside of there. It's not really a complicated, combination of switches and piezos. So most kick drums are compatible with most different drum modules. So you mentioned the Roland SPD1. So I'm guessing you're talking about the kick drum version, and that really isn't meant for this situation. This is meant for guys with like an acoustic guitar. They want to have some sort of like percussion element inside, and they don't want to have some sort of like, drummer in the box type of a thing. So they want to do it themselves. This gives them a solid kick drum sound that they can tune, add effects to. And it's an all-in-one trigger design. It generates the sound itself, and you can't actually plug this into a drum module like the TD17 unless you're going into the mix input. All right, so next up is Robert, who writes, Hey, how's it going? Big fan of your videos, and you always do a great job, man. Thanks, Robert. I really do appreciate that. Just a quick question. Looking for some like overhead recording of my drums. Do you have any suggestions on what type of setup, slash camera to use? Now, obviously, there's a ton of different cameras out there, and everyone has their different preference on how they want to record, video editing software to use and stuff. But as far as me personally, what I'm using is a Canon SL2. The reason why I like that camera is because it's not that expensive. It was like $600 or maybe $700, and it comes with a kit lens, which is very nice. It's got a flip around display, so I can actually see myself as I'm recording. There were times when I would record myself before I had the flip around display and realize the camera was slightly to the left or slightly, up too high, and that would mess up the whole recording. Especially if you're trying to position the camera up high and you want to see what the camera is seeing, you'll have the display that flips around so you can actually make sure that the whole drum set is in view. As far as mounting your camera, you'll probably want to just get a really tall camera tripod. There's also mounting hardware you can buy if you want to make a permanent installation into one of your walls. But yeah, just a really tall camera tripod will do the trick. Again, I'm a Canon guy. Also, Sony's very good. Those are the two main options. A lot of drummers even go for like GoPro cameras because of how cheap and versatile they are. It sounds really weird to say that people notice good lighting before they notice the camera quality, but it really is the case because I spent $70 on the lights. Everyone thought I bought a new camera. I spent $700 to $600 on a camera, and not as many people noticed. So yeah, go on Amazon and buy that. Go buy a decent camera. And if you really get into drum covers or music videos or whatever, you can spend your whole life savings on that equipment. It really has no end. Now, my favorite piece of gear that I recently bought was actually a camera slider. I can't remember how much it was. It was somewhere around like $200, and that gives me a moving shot even though there's no person manning the thing. So it gives your whole like drum cover, music video thing a more dynamic, vibe to it. Okay, so next up is Evan, who writes, Hey Justin, how bad is latency when using electronic drum software? This is a really tough question, Evan, because it depends on the gear you're using. For example, your drum module has a base amount of latency, and then your laptop has an amount of latency, but that's also affected by what kind of sound card is in your laptop. Also, Macs and PCs handle latency a little bit differently. And also, are you running different programs at the same time on your laptop? For example, the latency goes higher when you're running YouTube and your drum software at the same time because your laptop has to process both. So it really depends on the gear that you're using. For me personally, and this is just my personal case with the hardware I'm using, I've always been able to detect a very small amount of latency in the background, which again is the delay between you hitting the drum and actually hearing the sound through your headphones. Some people tell me that they never have latency because they're using Macs or they're using this program to eliminate, background processes and stuff. But for me, it's always slightly in the background. But the sounds that you get from the software, they really make up for it. And I would never do a really serious, legit recording with the internal module sounds. That's just me personally. Some people do, but I just feel like Superior Drummer 3 just sounds way better than any drum module I've ever heard in my life. So That's just the way I see it. All right, so this next comment was on my ATV A-Drums review video. Rich writes, "You mentioned that the kit only comes with 2-ply mesh heads, but do you know if you could change out those heads for 3-ply mesh heads and not hamper the performance of their triggering capability?" So definitely on the surface, it might appear that having more and more layers of material would hurt triggering performance for, a drum trigger such as that ATV set. But in my personal experience, every kind of 3-ply mesh head I've ever tried has never hurt triggering performance, not one single time. Now, there have been times like when I was using the Drum Tech, what was it called? The Pro heads, which is basically one really thick ply of a mesh head. And that mesh head, it did hurt the triggering performance just a little bit. It was still definitely playable, it was still very accurate, but you could tell the triggering performance did take a little bit of a dip just because that one layer was just so thick on that drum. But really, any kind of 3-ply mesh heads that you'll find, I've never had any problems with them. I've tried so far the, what do you call them? The Ballistic mesh heads. I've tried the Drum Tech 3-ply mesh heads. And I've also tried the Joe Becky 3-ply mesh heads. Never had any triggering problems with any of them. And they do help the feel of your drum set, in my experience. All right, so the next question comes from Dave, who writes, "Hey Justin, what amp do you currently use? I have a Simmons DA200, but I'm not liking the sound very much. So I was curious to see what you use. I often see a Roland one in your videos. Thanks for the help." So for me personally, I hate drum amps. Not because I don't like drum amps themselves, but I hate what they represent. The fact that I'm not blocking out the noise of me hitting those rubber cymbals, I just hate that sound. It sounds terrible. And whenever I'm using drum amps or monitors or even a PA system, I can still hear myself hitting those pads. When I'm wearing headphones or in-ear monitors, all that gets drowned away, and it's almost like I'm playing a regular acoustic drum set. Whenever I take off my headphones and switch over to like a PA system or a drum amp, it shatters the illusion, and that's why I just don't like it. But if I had to go buy a drum amp, I would probably buy one of the 2 new Roland amps because they're the best sounding drum amps I've ever heard. Some people really like the Simmons ones, some people don't. It's really just a personal taste thing. The Simmons ones are a really nice low cost option, but you already have that and you said you don't like it. So if you're gonna buy a new drum amp, I would try to look at the Roland one, or more preferably buy like a PA system, like a lower end PA system, because those are even better than a drum amp. And some people really like keyboard amps for their electronic drums too. In fact, some keyboard amps are rebranded as drum amps just because the guts inside of those are so similar to drum amps. Okay, so that's the video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Be on the lookout. I've got the review of the ATV 2-piece electronic hi-hats. That's going to come out pretty soon. And more stuff in the works too. So have an amazing day. See you in a few.